Joining us now is Tori Whiting, trade economist from the Heritage Foundation. And Tori, is this all politics, or can we expect something substantive from a potential meeting at the end of the month between those two leaders?
Well, here's the thing. I think anything that the two leaders can do moving forward to lessen the trade tensions between the U.S. and China will be a good thing. We need to cool off this trade war, this trade dispute, stop imposing tariffs, because the next thing for the U.S. is potentially going to be imposing tariffs on the remaining over $200 billion in imports from China. And primarily those are focused on consumer goods, products like Apple's iPhone and the things you were just talking about. And so we do not want to have those tariffs on consumer goods because Americans will feel that immediately. And I think the president realizes that he needs to cool down this trade war.
Tori, do you think it's possible that the White House could be divided here on this issue? Maybe President Trump is now would be more open to a deal similar to what he struck with Canada and with Mexico, and then call it a victory here for his administration in the short term?
Well, I think you point out a really interesting point here, because actually the new USMCA text has a prohibition on any of the party countries seeking a free trade agreement with a non-market economy. And the United States recognizes China as a non-market economy. So there are some tensions there within policy and where things will go for the future. But no matter what, I do think that this administration is saying that they need to cool things off with China. American businesses are hurting. American agricultural producers are hurting, and we need to cool this thing down.
Tori, can they craft some kind of deal that puts off the IP issues and protecting intellectual property to another day, but give us a deal that addresses maybe 90% of the U.S. complaints?
Not necessarily right away. I think we could see the beginning of these talks, but to say that the two leaders are going to come out with a finished and signed trade deal at the end of November during the G20 summit is probably going too fast, too far. But if they can come to some sort of agreement to lower their weapons, lower these barriers they've thrown up, and just start having talks again. We haven't had formal talks with the Chinese in over a year, almost 2 years. And so we need to reinstate those talks in order to move the ball forward. Otherwise, we're just talking past each other.
Tori, how likely do you think it is that China will now be, more open to giving up on some concessions here? Because we know their economy is under pressure. We've seen the recent econ data out of the country. Their markets are in turmoil. They've been under pressure now for weeks. So they're at a point where they might be more likely to agree to some things that they weren't going to agree to just a month or two ago.
Well, I don't think that you will see the Chinese really faltering whatsoever at this point. I mean, for the last several months, the Chinese and the U.S. have been very reciprocal in their attacks on one another, and the Chinese have made it very clear that they continue their willingness to be reciprocal in going back against the United States. So I can't see China just capitulating to the United States, because that is not their style. I think that both sides will have to give up something. The U.S. may be giving up their tariffs, China, agreeing to talks on things like intellectual property protection, maybe opening up an investment. We'll see where those things go. But there's a lot to be discussed here. And what we really need to be focusing on as Americans is how can we move these policies forward to do what's best for the American people? And that's having barriers lowered and trade open between the two countries as much as possible.